Welcome to Iron Advocate. Thanks for joining us. Got my man Mabs here running the board. Let's get right after it, Mabs. You want to get Wadud in here? My brother Wadud Ahmad is joining us here, and he is, as the screen is showing you, an artist, poet, lawyer, revolutionary thinker. And Wadud's going to pop in here. You check him out on the internet, man. He has crushed it. Multiple versions of his life, as I said, as a poet, spoken word artist, lawyer, father, partner, business partner, personal partner, and my brother, and truly one of the most generous, advanced in all the ways, revolutionary thinkers that I've ever met. A true poet, and we're gonna knock it around here today. So welcome to the show, my brother Wadud.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. It's always beautiful to see you, man.
It's been fortunate, man. Seeing you 3-4 times this week, so it's been a blessing in person and virtual. So right before we jumped on, we talk all the time. So you asked me, what are we going to talk about today? And I said to you that I think this last chapter of our brotherhood, we've known each other, closing in on 25 years now, probably.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a while, 25 years. This chapter, right, long chapter getting written here, but over the last number of years, we've been walking, joint and parallel paths of transformation. I said to you before we jumped on, I think we each will talk about it, describe ourselves as feeling pretty peaceful right now. Hasn't always been the case. We've been walking, lives of personal, professional transformation. And common thread for me, when I talk, teach, train, and just connect with humans is so many people feeling some kind of stuck. Sometimes in one part of their life, sometimes in all parts of their life, sometimes they can't define it. So I said to you, let's talk transformation. Let's talk the tools of transformation. So I'm gonna kick it to you to just maybe share a little bit about whatever you want to on the sight lines of this current phase of your transformation and maybe how it's been impacted by others. But I've been watching you transform into, I think, without question, the richest, most vibrant, loving, soulful version of yourself that I've known heretofore. So let's talk about that, man. How are you? How have you done it, and how are you doing it in real time?
Well, I think the only way for me to do it, because I'm trapped in my own mind with my own thoughts and whoever I think I am, that's who I am. And I realize there's nowhere else for me to go. And so my search, there's no journey other than right where I am. And whatever that is, whatever it feels like, looks like, and accepting that. And that is easier said than done in terms of my own personal experience. And I would imagine in terms of other folks, maybe listen to this with them as well. And then what I did is I began to really just have a conversation with me, whatever that conversation looked like and whatever that language is in my brain. And to try to challenge myself at all times and learn the lessons that I see from others about myself, and just as a way of kind of doing. And then not rooting for my own thoughts, right? And then after kind of developing that just approach to thinking as a whole, I think I'm fortunate enough to have the courage to act on the thing that I think I've learned about the direction in which I should take in my life. And that is a very difficult thing, and probably for me, the most difficult thing, to be willing to change your mind about really big, important decisions of your life. Like for
Yeah.
me, the people would say, "Well, what's the first big decision?" The first
Yeah. Can you
big
give
decision
us
that
give us some of these decisions?
the first big decision that I made, I was 17 years old after coming out of high school, barely graduated from high school, the only one of my friends who even graduated from high school, and realized that I hadn't prepared myself for anything other than some type of superficial street-esque type of life. I wasn't qualified to get a job. I, barely even came out of high school. And so I realized that if I stayed in Milwaukee and didn't change my environment, that the outcome of my life would be bleak. So I made a big decision, and I said I'm moving to Philadelphia. I had some relatives here in Philadelphia, and
Yeah.
I remember my father saying that no, you can't. I'm not. I'm not sending my problems to Philadelphia, right? And
Yeah.
then I said to him, I totally get it. There has been nothing that I have done since in my tenure here in the house to suggest that in any way that is an incorrect statement. And he told me later on that that was the first time I had ever said something to him that made sense. And all that was being
Right.
self-reflective. That was the beginning of owning my life. And then so
So
I moved to
yeah.
Philadelphia and dot dot dot.
So yeah, so geographical change, is huge, and so
Geographic
when I
change.
wrote, but what you're really talking about when I wrote Finding Polaris, it's hard to write a book. There are a lot of hard decisions you make, but it was never a difficult decision to know what the first chapter would be, right? So chapter one is titled "Ignorance is Not Bliss." It's a chapter on
Right.
self-awareness. That is the foundational block. So when we're talking to people, right, who are watching this and listening about transformation, what you just said, for me, I always knew chapter one would be ignorance is not bliss, right? And in that chapter, I say that bliss ultimately is simply the acceptance of all that is. That
That's
is
right.
ultimately bliss. Now, there are levels of that. I think we're at a point in our lives where, man, I invite all that is, but that's new. That's new. So when you were 17, you were aware enough to know geographical change was really meaningful for you.
That's right.
And when you fast forward now, 4 decades, for me, I invited, I think you're the same. How do you continue, or how have you continued to walk to get to a place where it's just like bring it on, right? That raw and honest dialogue with self. That is the first like key to the castle. That's the key to the front door to castle, right? Is
Right.
raw and honest dialogue with self.
Yeah. And one of the things, just because of, we're trapped with our perspectives as well. And our perspectives, as we've talked many times, are given to us depending on your culture, where you live, da 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 da. You have a perspective. So the first thing that when I began to become more and more aware of myself, I had to, for Wadud, be aware of the, the the tools that I'm using to process what I think I should do. And so um, the lens that I have, the things that I like, where did they come from? So I began to have a different type of conversation. And what that began for me to do is transform me into someone who thinks differently than I used to. And so now being self-critical for me is not critical in the way that I would believe that that meant 15 years ago. Critical for me now means healthy.
Yeah,
Critical is now weeding in my own mind and being glad when I find the weeds that are all mine, that have grown from the experiences and the DNA and the diet that I
yeah,
have. And there's no crisis, even though that there is, and that the healthiest thing for me is to be nervous. It got me
yeah.
to this place in time, right? And so not be afraid of the natural part of myself, so I can actually see what I'm experiencing. So
So,
if something's going in a way that is making me nervous, now I'm not afraid of it, and I can, bless you, I can walk towards it and begin to deal with it. And whatever happens, it's going to happen, and I'll be able to deal with that as well.
so here's what I hear you describing, and this is a beautiful recurring theme that happens in conversations I have with people. And I just had this conversation today with a client who was talking to me about, well, you know, saying to me, well, are you, or you appear so happy, right? Are you happy? And yeah, of course, I have a lot of happy moments and I'm very blessed. But what you're talking about is a recalibration, which is that in order to truly transform, the North Star is peace, not happiness, right, or joy. So my son Mabs is running the board here, right? You know him quite well. And of course, I want him and his brother and you, who I love, and all the people close to me to have, at the end of the day, more happiness and joy and laughter than they do sadness and grief and frustration and anger. But life's going to bring all of that. And the more you explore yourself, the more you invite a lot of things that oftentimes don't, right, feel good. And so the calibration from this idea that we want to be happy to the idea that we want to be peaceful, that we're okay with all of it. That is the essence of what you just described and what I think your 40 plus year journey from saying, I got to get up out of Milwaukee or I may end up dead, right, to where you are today. And then along that journey, it became less about the change. So when you were 17 and moved to Philly, it was about the change. I needed to change my environment, right? And you knew that, and there was I'll just call it rudimentary level of self-awareness, like I got to get up out of here, right? But what you and I think are talking about and sharing as brothers over the last bunch of years is a recognition that peace has to be the true Polaris of any real transformation.
That's right. That's right.
Did I get that right?
Oh, yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, I think that's the essence. And to be honest with you, I think that's the essence of probably most, if not all, living creatures. Right. So I always, when my kids talk, I want to be happy. I don't even know what that means. Smiling all the time. Your gums bleeding from smiling just so much. Isn't that dopamine? That sounds like addiction to me. Roller coaster ride and tears, right? I mean, right? Always Easter egg hunts, nothing else.
Right. That's why you go to Disney World, right? Is to be happy for 3 days, right?
Yeah, like forever, right? I said, what I want to be is I want to be that deer that comes out into the clearing and can put his or her head down into the grass and eat without nerves. Getting it to, right? I want to be content.
Right.
And so and that's not a small thing, because the idea of that applies to the things that you value, right? So now you're saying, why is my lens adjust to just always consumer, always wanting the next thing, always wanting more, never being satisfied, right? If I don't give you the card on that particular day, now all of a sudden a lifetime of us experiencing each other is not good enough because I didn't get you the right shape of chocolate. Unable to see each other, right?
So So I just want to, because I'm hoping people watch this, and I always say, if I could just leave a breadcrumb or 2 or 3 behind anywhere that we go and talk and speak and touch people. So contentment, right? Peacefulness, contentment, right? You use that beautiful visual of the deer, and the idea that we don't actually want to chase, the up and down. Yes, you want to have happiness, joy. I love laughing with you, but you're not going to chase something that is really more of a distraction than it is a road to true transformation, which has to be birthed from a place of deep peace and contentment. And what you said is essentially like, I want to peel away my anxieties, right? That's what you were saying. And so again, for like, I talk a lot about this, as a fundamental matter, I always also say, if you oversimplify, or I say these things are simply complex, the idea of life, you want to be as present as possible, right? So peace, contentment, that brings about presence, because then you're not afraid of anything that's going to happen in the moment, whatever that is. Right.
That's right.
And so if you think of it as a time continuum, and this is something that became really powerful for me over the years, I want to maximize the amount of presence on the time continuum right in the center. Right. And so when I think about, if I am looking back, right, back is always resentment, frustration, anger, right? Future is always, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Or what if this doesn't happen? Or what if this does happen? Right? And that's, tension, stress, and ultimately anxiety. And so if you have a constant recalibration that I just want to be here, like you said, and not drawn to an anxious energy by what may happen, right? And so I'm gonna kick it back to you that you have, I'm not gonna say you've mastered it, but you're a pretty peaceful brother. And that's inside of your personal relationships, right? So put context to this, right? It's one thing to talk about it, and that's powerful, but to then exercise it inside of relationships with adult children, right? Some of whom work for you, and watching them live out their life, which taps into our greatest, source of fear, right? I got my man Mabs here working with us. What's up, Mabs? And relationships with, partners, spouses, ex-spouses, business partners, right? Clients. And I watch you deal inside of all those relationships, and you bring peace to all of those, So how do you have some, some thoughts or tips, or can you identify how you constantly are recalibrating yourself during the day? Because it's one thing to, to be with a book in our backyard or in our own space and feel really peaceful. It's another thing to enter into the kind of relationships that we as adults all have that are complex and bring that peace with you.
If I was to say the one word, now, the soil that whatever you say to folks, or I say, or whoever, whatever positive words anyone says to folks, if you don't have discipline, you can't take advantage of any of it. Right? I don't care if it's an apple pie recipe. If you don't have the discipline to do it, it's not going to happen. So let's assume that the soil of all of this is discipline. The second thing for me is knowing, in one word, boundaries. I have a lot of boundaries in my life. Okay. And the boundaries have nothing to do with others and have everything to do with me.
Say that
And
again. Can you say that again?
The boundaries have nothing to do with others and have everything to do with me. So if somebody comes here and comes into my office and sits in my desk and with me in it and sits on my lap and and smacks me in the face, that the consequences of whatever happens to them will happen. But I look at it from my own philosophical approach. That's my fault.
Yeah. So
there's something that I've created in my life
yeah.
where a scenario like that is
that
actually possible to happen.
But go ahead.
Yeah.
But no, let me stop you there for a second, because I want people watching to think and say, what would they say to themselves if that really happened? Man, they came up in my office, they hit me, they came up in my space, I can't, and then you're off to the races, right? Like what you're saying is really powerful. It's like, it's caricaturish and it's example, but think about how most people, this is the difference between responding and reacting. How most people reacted. They came up in my shit and they did, how dare they do that, right?
Let me give you a better example.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a pause there, but I'm going to give you a better example that really just brings it home. To let the listener know you can put down the guru book or the encyclopedia of the mind or whatever you got. And the essence of it is this. I pull up to a Wawa or some, like a Sunoco or something some years ago. And there's a guy out front who's selling fake watches and jewelry. And what he's doing is he's reading people as they come up. Certain folks he doesn't approach because he knows that it is not going to be a chance. So as I'm getting out of my car, I'm watching him. And he comes up and makes a beeline to me and goes through his whole spiel and opens up his coat and has his watches. And after he finishes, because I stay present in my own thoughts.
Yeah.
I look at him, I say, yo, man. I said, do me a favor. What was it about me
that had a fluorescent light over you?
What have I lost in my movement in the world? Just let you say to yourself, "Nah, I'm not gonna mess with this guy." And so he bust out laughing because that's the essence of it.
Yep.
So it was maybe the car that I was driving. I looked approachable. I just analyzed the place that I am, and I never fault anybody for what they bring. Now, what they bring, I have to respond to. It got a block. I might have to sue. We might have to be wrestling. Who knows what it is? But it's not their fault. So the people, if you're in a bad relationship, I said, once he told you what he was the first day, on year 17, it's hard for you to complain.
and your choices inside of the dynamic. And at the end of the day, here's the thing about presence, though. If how you got there isn't what instructs you on the present moment, then you're good. You're not going to get lost. You can reflect and learn, but this is the thing about past. Oh, and then, man, I can't believe that. How do we get here? You are here.
Right.
Okay? This is inside of every relationship, whether it's the guy outside the Sunoco or Wawa, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a sibling or child. You are here. Okay? Yeah. And so that's the essence of what you're saying. And so with the boundaries, it's so funny because these were some of the chapters in Finding Polaris that got written at the end, because it's one thing to cover the EQ, right?
Right.
You know, like I do in part one. But then when you get to part three, which is the application, that's when you start, oh, wait, man, I ain't got a chapter on boundaries, right?
Right.
You know, I don't have a chapter on spirituality and religion, right? And I don't want to get
Right.
dismissed as somebody who's not factoring the importance of that in, right?
Right.
And how people may see through a lens that is important to consider those things. But on
Right.
the boundary piece, here's how I do this, which is that boundaries about who do I want to be and how do I want to show up for the people that are most important in my life. So if I think about it as, you know, as Mabs and Rome, my two boys, as, you know, my brother like you, one of the people I'm closest to in the world, whoever the people are, boundaries about how I want to show up for them. And if I make choices or have poor boundaries that either have me get punched in the face in my own office, in your example, or just have my energy get drained in a way that I can't be the best version of myself for them, that's on me. That's not on the person that I have failed to put the boundary up on, that then is draining my energy. Okay. And it's hard. And I was somebody who completely had this cockeyed for many years because I love to help. I love to serve. I love to help folks.
Right.
But I've had to recalibrate how I make those choices and the why behind why I'm doing it, you know, and what it does for my energy.
Yeah, and the boundary piece is also it's. I use a lot of these terms as, you know, they're sort of artistic terms as well. So the boundaries are also preventing me from acting a certain way because I have to have a philosophy about how I move in the world and stay within my own boundaries, right? My own rules, my own ethics, my own morals, whatever those are, right? And so, yeah,
What
those are important. And
what situ?
how I deal with conflict. I have a way in which I try to approach things before they even encounter. So I even encounter them. So now here I am in this crisis. That way in which I deal with things is deliberate.
What Yeah, intentionality is huge in these
Yeah.
things, right? Deliberation, intentionality. What you're saying is I think I hear you saying, and this is, I think, critical for folks trying to really transform, is be really intentional around the situations you put yourself in. They could be big situations, little situations, right? Whether, like, I'm in a frame of mind, I'm driving, I want a coffee, right? But maybe I am not feeling in a way where if I interact with people, the person behind the counter or somebody I bump into when I go through the door,
Hmm.
that my energy is just not feeling like it's in a place that I need to be with another human right now
That's right.
on any level, right? It may just be to go in and grab my coffee, right? And then it may also be choices around when you choose to, you know, have difficult conversations, right? Or whether to have them at all, right? Oftentimes the most powerful thing we can do is just not, right? And so along with the boundaries, and this is a direct connection to it, it's being really incredibly intentional about the situations you put yourself in.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
And being able to
you know,
see, you know, what you know, if you respond this way, how many work the math problem through, you know, and you'll find out that, you know what, it is about as disastrous as that insurance commercial that, you know, I forget the one where you wind up in a ditch because you decided to, you know, go into a convenience store.
the
But
yeah, I mean, this is Einstein's definition of insanity,
yeah,
right? This is the emotional intelligence version of, you know, repeating the same cycles with the same people, expecting a different
right,
result. And so, and so I think that I also think of it this way, and this is a, you know, important visual for me. The beginning of every day, you know, or every interaction, you have a bucket of energy, right? So I look at myself as having a bucket of energy each day. And when you splash energy out, you
right,
know, sloppily or recklessly, you don't get that energy back. But somebody doesn't come and fill the bucket back up. You know, it's the next day or whenever it is that you may recharge yourself from it. But you don't. Somebody doesn't come around and say, "Oh, here's that energy back you threw out." And so I think of that bucket of energy as precious, right? I have this precious bucket of energy that I'm so blessed to be able to share right now on this conversation at 3:00 in the afternoon. We're recording. I want to, you know, a whole bunch of things have happened since I got up at 5. Right? And those decisions play into how I show up right here to do something incredibly enriching and wonderful for my soul. And if I show up with less energy, that's on because I've made poor choices about interactions, conversations, and things we just talked about. That's on me. And then I'm not my best self, and then I'm ultimately not going to transform, right? The kind of transformation we're talking about, it requires enormous intentionality and deliberation, like we're talking about. What's the payoff, Wadud? So we're talking about, and we'll continue to talk on this show going forward about these things. But what's the payoff now? So what's what's the I always use this term, see the Emerald City and then go back and lay the bricks to the yellow brick road. So we're talking about how you might lay some of these bricks. What is it that when you get to a place of true, internal peace, which is what we're talking about. Talk about the impact. What does that look like? Feel like?
I would say that the payoff. I mean, and to be as honest as I can, the payoff for me is sanity, and sanity is health, and health is not necessarily physical. Health is the state of your mind. To me, the state of Wadud's mind, and what my diet and how, my physical abilities, that's a reflection of the health of my brain. And so the payoff is that. And for artistic shock value, it's almost as if we were trapped in the movie The Hunger Games, and we're the only ones who knew that we were in the Hunger Games. We still got to play. We still got to be there. We still got to show up, right? Huh. But the place is so much more tolerable. And you will look a little different because you'll know that the blue suit is overrated.
Yeah, I mean but it's true health. It's true, amen. Like it's true health. And I'll say for me, it's presence of a level I never experienced before, right? So what would maybe be a mundane interaction becomes something that is transformative all the time, right? That this very experience we're having here just maximized, I could have this conversation with you some years ago. It would have been interesting, fun. We'd have had some laughs. But the experience of sitting here and having, my son Mabs on the other side of the board, have you on here and have this dialogue, it's magical, quite frankly, right? Yes. It is to be locked in and fully present the way that you can be when you get to a place of peace. That shit is magical, man. So that to me, that's the payoff.
It's the daily. Yeah, it's the daily. It is. And because the way that I think in my mind, I have kind of an oversimplification. I have lived my life as a dress rehearsal in my mind, and I'm actually, if I was to make the painting, it would be me in a chair with my back to the wall, and there's a road that leads to a door. And I'm next to the door with my back to the wall. But when you open that door, that's the black ending of whatever used to be me. And I've walked the road. So now I'm looking back at my life and appreciating every stone, every flower, every interaction. When I buy something, there's a place that I go to get vintage clothing, and there's a young lady that patches up my clothing. I have her sign it for me. The art of life is in the daily things that you can see, only if you can see them. So for me, I don't have a destination. My destination is here. It's at the coffee shops that I go to, and the conversations, and this podcast, and right. So
thanks,
that's
brother. The art of life. I love that the art of life is in the daily happenings, right? I mean, that says it all. And I want to say this, and I'm gonna give Mabs warning that I wanted him to share his kind of takeaways from this and what what he's hearing and feeling, what he's doing on his end, at his age, which is 21, and applying these things or trying to, hopefully. And what I want to say is tell people that this will feel overwhelming or insurmountable if you make it about the actual change. Personal transformation is imperceptible in real time. It's about the small shifts in this internal dialogue. It has to get unlocked first with the internal dialogue, right? Of just becoming okay with all the things. You don't have to act, not only not have to, you shouldn't act on the things until you really get your sea legs and some muscle memory around just running through everything on the rawest level that you're feeling, honestly, and being okay sitting with that in stillness, right?
That's right.
That's the work. And then when that becomes familiar, right, and you start to invite more of that discomfort because your discomfort meter is shifting, right? What it takes for you to get uncomfortable requires more. You keep doing that, and then you just keep doing it. And then you do one thing and another thing, right? And let go of the transformation or the result. That's the formula, right? That's the formula. Let go of the trying or what it's going to become or how do I get there or man, I'm not going to get to where what these guys are talking about. That's the formula. Don't overcomplicate it, and also don't underestimate how difficult and challenging it's going to be, and how incredibly worthwhile it is, because hard shit is where it's at, and that's just truth. So that's my simply complex. These are simply complex terms that when you start doing them, they're rather simple, but working through the internal stuff to be able to do that is the hard stuff. So, Mabs, I'm gonna kick it to you for a sec. I think that handsome face of Wadud's here is a little frozen on the screen, so I'm sure he's gonna be popping back in. You may be working the board there, bringing him back. So you pop in here and talk to me, or let me know when Wadud's back. For everybody watching and listening, I really do believe if you pick up a copy of Finding Polaris, I'm not going to push hard on this, but chapter 1 is where it's at in this conversation, which is ignorance is not bliss. Like really, really lean in, and it is hard work and worthwhile work to become okay and friends with all of your deepest, most private, and most honest thoughts, feelings, emotions, realities, questions, fears. That is where it's at. That is worthwhile. And every time it feels scary, lean in, don't lean out. So you'll hear me say time and time again, always RSVP will attend when fear invites. This work feels really tricky and scary, particularly when you're starting it. Seek that fear out and lean into it, and do it over and over and over again. That's the formula. So I'm gonna invite here Wadud, who's popped back in. Mabs, I'd love you to pop in and share with us as we land this plane. I think you heard what I just said, Wadud. You got anything on that? And there's our man Mabs who's gonna share with us, and we'll get this thing landed. Go ahead, my brother Wadud.
Yeah, I think that you said it all. It's just, in essence, accepting yourself for who you are, whatever that is, as you try to figure it out. And no matter what that answer is, no matter what it sounds like to yourself, that's where you're going to start. So you might as well love him or her as much as you can immediately, and then start to walk that way. And so, and don't, no matter how, I used to say to myself, the fact that I'm afraid of the thoughts in my own mind, when I have to be the referee in the room. So let me start telling my own self to shut up and sit down, and so let me
Back
get
to your
through all my daddy
neutral
issues
corner
real quick, right?
I mean, but you hit another key point: self-kindness, right? You gotta, you gotta be kind to yourself when you start unraveling this stuff. But then it becomes, it will eventually become a healthy obsession. Like it will. Mabs,
And
man,
embracing
these
your tears. But I'm talking about like embracing your tears. I got to a place where I was going through a very rough period, and I used to just on purpose bring myself to the maximum of my sadness and then cry in the mirror as a liberating thing, to
yeah,
totally as an exercise for my mind. So because those are my tear ducts, those are my tears. So let me take control of what they mean to me. And I
yeah,
use that as a practice when the day comes when my mother passes or a loved one passes. I walk through it So
Yeah.
now I don't look at sadness the same. So sadness now is the more I'm crying and snot coming out of my nose meant the more I loved. So I want to
Man.
be in a situation where I got belly cramps because that too
Yeah.
shall pass.
Man.
That too shall pass. So I hold
It,
on to my crying now.
Man,
Yeah,
I love that. I
yeah,
cry, hold on to it. That reminds
yeah.
me of it's probably been a year or maybe a little more than a year. Mabs and I were all off doing some stuff. He was at school at Gettysburg, I think. And anyway, conversation turned to him looking at me and saying, "Man, I don't know what I'm gonna do. The day you die, that'll where will I go? What will I do? And I remember turning to him and saying, like, this is where it's at, man. Like, number one, you will be okay, right? You have
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
that you need,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And number two, that these explorations are where it's at. Like the stuff that feels like, man, I don't even want to say this, right? That's where
yeah,
it's at, right? And I remember thinking, like, man, I'm so glad that he articulated that,
yeah,
and of course I know he's got everything
yeah,
he needs, right? And also get as much as you can while I'm here, whatever I got to offer, but it's recognition
right.
of that,
Yeah.
right, of all
Of the
those things.
natural
So
thing that occurs in life. Every living cell that has ever lived. For some reason, they gave me the story to be afraid of my cell that's going to pass away too. So I rejected that as an idea. So now I run towards what once when the lesson I got from my grandmother, who for me was whatever a saint could be, she was that person. And when she passed away, I was I went into her bathroom and I grabbed her sheets out of the cabinet and I shoved them in my face and just inhaled the smell of her. And I could not imagine making it to that magical place called tomorrow. And I'm crying and crying and crying. And
oh, we lost him, man.
I,
There he is.
I envisioned, can you hear? Am I here?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
You're good. Go
I
ahead.
envisioned
Pick up
my
right where you.
Okay. I envisioned my grandmother coming up next to me while I'm locked in the bathroom and putting her hand around me and saying, "My baby, look at you crying for me like this, how much you love me. Don't jump in the grave with me, though." And so
Yep.
I understood at that young person that that too shall pass. So now I began to see my tears different. Don't cheat me out of my tears. I want, listen, Mav, when the day happens, you better be on your knees crying like a baby with snot coming out your nose and rolling around because that's the evidence of the love. And now you're obligated to do what? Be the best Mavs ever. You can take as long as you want. Nobody can tell you how long you got to take to mourn. Take as long as you want. Grow out. You can come out with your dreads down to China, but come out and live your life.
That's it, man. That's
Come
it.
out.
That's it.
Right?
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, man.
That's
Don't
it.
let them don't
So,
let them destroy the work that your father does by telling you that now you have to die when your father does. That's insane.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's it.
Yeah.
as you guys were talking about it, instead of fearing it,
Yeah,
embrace
man.
those even if it's good
Yeah.
or bad feelings, embrace
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
nowadays people,
The flip side of love is the pain. Yeah, man.
yeah, nowadays people just want to push the bad things and try to just keep the good things open, and then
Right.
that's when it comes to that you keep everything bottled up and you don't express it, and then maybe you just flip it on one little thing,
Right.
and it's not on that little thing. It's just multiple things that just end up building up into one big thing instead of expressing those emotions when they do hit you. Yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
for
That's right.
sure.
Yeah. And
That's right.
that's it, man. So we gonna pick this up? Maybe talking about fathers, maybe where we pick this conversation up next, because
Respect.
each of ours played a big part, and we trying to do it a little better this generation, or a little differently, I should say. I
Yeah, a
wouldn't say
little
better
different.
or worse, just a little different, a little
Yeah.
different,
Yeah, a little different.
my brother. So this we'll just keep this on going, man. Keep doing what you're doing, man. And anybody who's gotten the pleasure and honor to spend time with you in person or catch you on this conversation is better for it. I am
Respect.
such a better human for our brotherhood. I love you, man.
I
I
appreciate
appreciate
you,
you.
man.
All right,
Same.
man.
That
Appreciate
goes
you.
two ways. Two ways. And mad
Thanks, brother.
respect, brother. Love you.
He's killing
Love
it,
you
man.
both, man.
Man, neither of us would look like this, have any kind of setup like this without that guy. So we'd be on a rotary phone, all right, trying to figure out with a cassette tape, trying to tape this shit, right?
Right.
And then we'd be trying to figure out how to get this on. What's it called? Spitify? What's this? How do we get it up on there?
Right.
Like, right? So
I'll give Bob the credit as well. A little bit of credit. Yeah.
a little bit.
Appreciate
He's
you.
got a little.
Listen, man. Teamwork makes the dream work. Teamwork makes the dream work, man. That's it. All right.
All right, you guys. Respect.
Take
to
us
you.
home, Mabs. Take us home, man.